Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright. Episode 3 for PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. Different location, back in the great state of Michigan, the Great Lakes state. Excited to be back, excited to enjoy the weather because it's nice here in the summer. You actually have nice weather. You can go outside. It's a little bit warmer. You don't have to deal with snow. Emphasis on snow and cold weather. I hate cold weather anyway. Let's jump right into it. So there was a comment that I saw on TikTok on our social media platforms, basically saying it was kind of regarding the clip about talking about NIL and how it's changed the game for these college football programs. Well, the comment basically say players don't make the team, it's the program, which I thought was a really interesting question. And I thought it would be great to kind of take a deeper dive into that here today. Because basically on one end, I'm thinking, yes, obviously, it is. I do believe that you have to set a great culture and a great standard to represent your program and what you want it to be. But also, without the players, you don't have a program. You need to have those players that you find on the recruiting trail to get them into your program, because that's what's going to make the program. Yeah, obviously, you have to have your coach come in and establish the culture and tradition and expectations of the program to succeed and set those goals that you're setting for your team. But you need to get those players that fit your scheme and fit your philosophy and your program of what you want your program to become. That starts with every head coach at every level. Nick Saban did that when he went to Alabama. Dabo Swinney did that when he took over as the head coach at Clemson. There's numerous examples in college football that have done that and have been able to make the program based on their expectations and goals. And, a lot of times you have that battle or that power struggle, if you will, when you have those players who were established under one head coach from one program and they have a new head coach who's kind of manning or taking the reins of the program. Nick Saban's a great example of his first year in 2007. They lost to Louisiana Monroe out of all programs, a program that they should win 10 out of 10 times, but they lost because they didn't have that expectations, and they have, of course, the players, especially the upperclassmen, could have had this, mindset of like not buying in, giving 100%. They have, we've been told this one thing from our last head coach, and now we have this other guy who's coming in here, and it's a whole different thing. So it's, and that's for every program across all sports, and even at the professional level, is having to adapt and almost be like a chameleon and kind of blend in and disguise yourself to fit the best needs of the program, and just honestly being adaptable and being able to change. That's what's important in college football nowadays. Now, Ohio State, they're the defending national champions, won the college football playoff back in 2024 after not even making the Big Ten championship game, after losing to Michigan and Oregon in the regular season. But will they be able to bounce back in 2025? And I think so. They're losing a ton of talent, though, especially their starting quarterback, a lot of playmakers on the defensive side. So they still have an amazing receiving corps. So, that's going to be great for them because they're going to have the playmakers on offense to make some plays. But also, I think they're going to be just fine. Are they going to win the national championship? I personally don't think so. But they're still going to be a respectable program, and they're still going to be successful in 2025. So I don't think that will be much of an issue. So now taking a look at with college football, we still have a couple months, that being until August. So how many months is that from now? We're in June now. So 2 months until college football is back. And so with college football just being around the corner, you have these guys who are making predictions of their top 25 on what's going to be the next program. So I saw this article from ESPN's Mark Schlabach, basically talking about his post-spring top 25. And we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to take a look at the article, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on where he's placed each of these teams in the top 25. So starting off, number 1, he's got Penn State. They went 13-3 last season, 8-1 in the Big Ten, lost to Oregon in the Big Ten championship, and they finally got around that corner, finally got to that they finally made the playoff and won some games. But, and while I think they are returning a lot of good players on their team, they have Drew Aller, Katron Allen, AJ Harris on the defensive side, which is great having those guys back. But you almost wonder, were they able to make this, were they actually a better team in 2024? Or did they just have that luxury with the expanded playoff that was able to showcase more of their success? I'm not sure, neither here or there. I think they were a really good team in 2024, and it showed. But will they be able to be the number one team in the country next year? I'm not so sure. I'm not really buying it. I understand why he put them at number one, but nonetheless, probably wouldn't be where I put it at number one. So number two, Clemson. Now they went 10-4 and 7-1 in the ACC, and I think they are going to have a really good season in 2025. Cade Klubnik's back, Antonio Williams, Blake Miller, Sammy Brown, TJ Parker, just to name a few. But there were some moments last year where Clemson just did not look dominant. And I always refer back to the Louisville game just because I was there, but just like, I don't know. Are they really going to make that much of a jump to be the number two team in the country? I'm not so sure. So wanted to get another pick that I'm not sure if I would put Clemson that high. Now the Texas Longhorns. Texas Longhorns went 13-3, 7-1 in the SEC, and they were ranked 2 last time, according to his previous rank, I guess, from Schlabach. And the big question here is Arch Manning going to take the big step? Is he going to be able to take the reins from Quinn Ewers in this Texas team that had a lot of success, really kind of seemed like they were able to entrench themselves, had a really good 2023. They stayed right on track in 2024. And this is a team that I think they're a top 3 team. I would even probably put them at either 1 or 2, probably 2. But I think the Longhorns are going to have a really successful 2025 as well as the rest of the SEC. Next up, the Georgia Bulldogs. That's another team that I would put in the top 3 just because Kirby Smart, in my opinion, as of right now, is the best head coach in college football. And his track record speaks for itself, winning national championships, back-to-back national championships, then getting in the title appearance in 2017. He's got the track record, and it just shows that he's a successful team, and they have successful players in the program. Now, it's more so, can those players stay out of trouble? And only time will tell for that one. And then 5, the Ohio State Buckeyes. As I mentioned, 2024 national champions, a lot of guys that they're losing on the roster, but they still have a successful core group. So how are they going to do in 2025? Only time will tell. Number 6, the LSU Tigers. Now, this is really interesting. I think that is fairly high for the Tigers, especially since they went 9-4 last season. This is really boom or bust for Brian Kelly, I think. I can see a scenario where Brian Kelly doesn't have as much success in 2025, where they might even fire him. It's not out of the realm of possibility. He could get fired in 2025, especially since I don't think a single head coach of the SEC got fired this past season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a single head coach get fired. Usually that kind of springboards the other way in the next season. Now, they have a really good roster. I like Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for their team. I also like Harold Perkins Jr. Kind of felt like he was going to felt like he was going to be a lot better than what he was. Still really successful, but we'll have to see. So that's the Tigers. Next, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. A team that went 14-2, was really good, and Riley Leonard and Marcus Freeman, and I love Marcus Freeman as a head coach. I think he's a top 5 coach in college football as well. As kind of really amped up the recruiting trail for this Fighting Irish team after taking over for Brian Kelly. But how are they going to be in 2025? They went on such a high from 24. Can they keep it up in 25? That will be the question this season. Number 8, the Oregon Ducks. Now, I'm surprised they're down all the way at 8. I would probably have the Ducks higher, I keep saying top 3, but at top 5 at the very least for this Duck squad. There was times where they looked a little bit like imposter syndrome. They had a really slow start to the season in 24, and then they barely squeaked out a win against Ohio State. But I like Dan Lanning. I like what he's been able to do. They're kind of running the West Coast as of right now. Can they keep it up? Time will tell. The Alabama Crimson Tide, are they due for a bounce back season in 25? They went 9-4, which is crazy. A bounce back season from 9-4. A lot of teams will take that. It's the second year under Kalen DeBoer. Getting them entrenched in the program, taking over from Nick Saban, who's arguably one of the greatest coaches in college football history. And now DeBoer has his guys. He has a new offensive coordinator in Grubb taking over. So he has this guy that he had over in Washington. And I think they will bounce back and be a very successful team, although they looked awful in that bowl game against Michigan, especially Jalen Monroe. But Jalen Monroe is no longer there. So what does that mean for Bama in 2025? I keep saying time will tell, but we don't know until we see it. We don't know until we see it. And next up, the Illinois Fighting Illini at number 11. And that's interesting because I would not put them that high. Now, I like the Fighting Illini. They went 10-3, 6-3 in the Big Ten in 24, but I really like what Brett Bielema has done for that program. This is a program that has struggled. They had Lovie Smith, they had a bunch of these head coaches who just never really seemed like they kind of, to be honest, they were the bottom feeders of the Big Ten. They weren't really competitive. They were just kind of there. But Brett Bielema has really made them competitive, and it's great to see. But it's just hard. They had a great season back in, I believe it was 2022. They had a really good season in 2022, made a bowl game, and then the next year I think they went 5-7. So it's like, can they build off the success that they had in 2025? They have Luke Altmaier coming back, Aiden Lowry, a couple other additions that they found in the transfer portal from West Virginia and Wisconsin. I don't know. I feel like 11 is way too trigger happy for this ranking to put them this high, especially in the Big Ten, which is so competitive. And Bielema mentioned, is having that respect. A lot of people don't respect them in the Big Ten, but it's just so hard when you have strong teams such as Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Those are three teams right off the bat. Is Illinois on that level? I personally don't think so, but I do think they are going to be a great team in 25. I just don't know if 11 is the right ranking. At 12, they have the Arizona State Sun Devils. I think Arizona State, they made the playoff last year. I kind of talked about, if they didn't have that automatic qualification thing that they did this past season that they've changed for this season, I don't know if they would have even made the playoff if they lost the Big 12 title. So, and I think the change is for the better. But as for Arizona State, they have Sam Levitt. A lot of rumblings that he's going to have another great season in 2025. They lost Cam Scadaboo, which is a loss, but I think they kind of be able to adapt and kind of change the way that offense has been running. I like Kenny Dillingham. I think he's a really good coach on the rise. He's gonna make some really good noise in the future. Now, is he in that upper echelon? Is he in that S tier of head coaches? Not right now, but he's got a bright future, and I think he could do it. He kind of talked about how he might be like the kings of the Big 12, and they might dominate for years and years and years to come. Kind of like how Clemson did in the ACC for so long when they had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. But, we'll have to see. The Big 12 is such a chaos and kind of a cluster all over the place. So we'll have to see if they can build off the success that they had in 2024 and keep it rolling in 25, because it's a tall task, but I think the Sun Devils could do it. 13, South Carolina. I like Shane Beamer. I like what he's been able to do. A lot of people are high on Lenore Sellers. Some people even say that he's a Heisman favorite. I feel like the Heisman favorite every single time, every single year, whoever the Heisman favorite doesn't end up winning the Heisman. I couldn't tell you the last time the Heisman favorite from preseason to the end of the season actually won the Heisman. So sorry that I meant, just kind of interesting that I mentioned that, but Lenore Sellers kind of looking like one of the favorites as of right now. I think South Carolina is going to have a really good season, kind of hover around that 8 to 10 win mark. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I'm not going to solidify that, and I'll get more into that in the future once I get into conference predictions for these teams. But we'll see what South Carolina can do in 2025. 14, Iowa State Cyclones. Not going to be honest, don't really know much about this team. I know Matt Campbell has been at the helm for a long time. It's almost like for a good number of years, it was like, oh, Matt Campbell's going to be the next up-and-coming head coach. He's going to take a blue blood job, but he stayed there. He stayed true to that program, and he's been loyal to the Cyclones. They have Rocco Beck, Carson Hansen, and a couple other transfers that came in. 11-3 this past season, 7-2 in the Big 12, made the Big 12 championship, facing off against the Arizona State Sun Devils. But 14, are they going to have that as much success? We'll have to see. I do think that some people should start respecting the Big 12, and it really seems like Schlabach is for the most part, trying to make it a little bit balanced between the conferences. So I'm liking the ranking so far. A couple changes that I would make, of course. And then we'll stop at it right there, and we'll talk about the other half in the next episode. 15, the SMU Mustangs. They're 11-3, went 8-0 in the ACC in their first year in the conference. That's impressive. Really, really impressive. Kevin Jennings kind of was a breakout star for this team. He wasn't even the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, but then take over the reins. He played really well against Louisville and some other teams, making their first ever college football playoff appearance as well. You know, the it's looking bright down there in Dallas for the Mustangs. But 15, are they going to have that? Are they going to build off that? I feel like a lot of what this ranking is like the success of the team the previous season. And maybe that will be more of the case with this new expanded playoff format. But I feel like a lot of the times teams that were really good the previous year that didn't really have that success in the past in the previous years, kind of like a TCU, a Notre Dame maybe in 21, a Cincinnati, and a lot of that has to do with coaches moving on. But once they have that success, they kind of fall down the cliff and kind of plummet a little bit. But we'll have to see. SMU, I think they're going to be in for another good season in 25, but I don't know if they'll make the college football playoff. In fact, I don't think they will. But Rhett Lashley, really good head coach, has a lot of really good schemes offensively of what he can do for this team. So that's what I got right now. That's Schlabach's top 25, or the first half of his top 25, if you will. We'll go back into the back half of that ranking in the next episode. So moving along into our next segment of stuff going on outside of college football. The Louisville Cardinals in baseball made the Super Regional. Props to that team. There's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows for this team so far this season. You had upset wins against Florida State, North Carolina. You win those series, but in the regular season, they didn't win a single series on the road. So it's kind of impressive to me that they've been able to have the success in the NCAA tournament, because they didn't win a series on the road the entire year. Now, they were dominant at Jim Patterson Stadium, and unfortunately, it would be kind of poetic if they end up losing in the Super Regional to Miami. But I'm gonna stay positive. I'm gonna stay positive as a Cardinal alum and a Cardinal grad. They're going to do well in the Super Regional. But no, I'm props to this team that has faced a lot of challenges this season, but has also had some really good success getting back into the postseason in 2025. Go Cards. Now, moving on to the Belmont Stakes in 2025. Kicks off Saturday, June 7th. I think the big battle is going to be between the winner of the Preakness and the winner of the Kentucky Derby. Sovereignty from the Kentucky Derby and journalism from the Preakness, And let's take a look at the odds. This is courtesy of CBS Sports odds and poster. And obviously, these are going to change as they get closer and closer and closer to the race. But look at journalism odds. He's 8-5. Sovereignty is 2-1. Rodriguez 6-1, and Hill Road 10-1. Also, Beza is at 4-1 odds, in case you didn't know. I think journalism's going to win it. I was right on the Preakness, and I think journalism's going to win it again here in the third race of the Triple Crown. But I think Sovereignty is going to be right there. It's going to be a battle, of course. But I wouldn't even be surprised if there's an underdog or an upset in this match, because that's what happens in horse racing. It's not always the favorite to win, which makes me a little bit scary and uneasy. But, that's what I'm rolling with. I started with journalism in the Preakness, and I'm rolling with journalism in the Belmont all the way. I'm his number one fan. Not really, but I'm picking him. So next up, we'll talk about the Cherries, AFC Bournemouth of the Premier League, tied for their best finish in the Premier League. They finished 9th in the 2025 season, or 2024-2025 season. And this is great just because for Bournemouth, they've had a tremendous story in their organization's history. They started off in, even just like 15, 20 years ago, they were in League Two. They had a lot of financial instability in that team, almost wondering if they were going to cease operations and maybe not even exist, almost getting relegated to semi-professional leagues below the last tier of League Two in the English Football League. But they have this great story. They get promoted, and then they finally get to the Premier League in the early 2010s. And then a lot of people thought, oh, they got promoted, but they're just going to go right back down. No, they spent a good couple of seasons staying up in the Prem until they finally got relegated. But then just only like 2 or 3 seasons later, they finished 9th. I think they got promoted back to the Premier League in 2022. And here they are. They were really good, really competitive. We're almost in the top 5 at one point this season in 25. Great to see for the Cherries. This is a team that I have, a lot of family ties to. My grandpa, he loves this team. He's their number one fan. And so got to give a little shout out to the Cherries in the Premier League. Now, the Detroit Tigers in Major League Baseball. Are they the best team in baseball? They have the best record in baseball. They have 40 wins, the first team to 40 wins so far this season, ahead of the Dodgers, ahead of the Yankees. And this is a Tiger team that has just been on a streak since last season, all the way back in August. They had that winning streak, to one of the most improbable runs to make the postseason. And really, since then, they've been the best team in baseball. I mean, the track record speaks for itself. You have Tyreek Skubal, you have Kerry Carpenter, you have all these guys that are just making it a really good team under the direction of AJ Hinch. But can they keep it up? A lot of times baseball teams, especially championship teams, they have a little bit of a slump. We'll have to see. When is that slump going to be? And how big is that slump going to be for this Tiger squad? And finally, let's get us closed up with the Star Wars batting lineup. If I had to choose a starting 9, now this is just the batting side. We'll get into the defensive side in another episode. But if I had to go 1 through 9, who is going to be my batting lineup for this team in the Star Wars universe? Now, we're keeping it very simple. We're only doing characters from the canon movies. I'm not going with Princess Leia's daughter or granddaughter, which I don't even know who that is. I don't even know if that's even written. But we're going with main characters from the movies, from episodes 1 through 9, I guess, because I do even have some of the newer movies. Anyway, well, you'll see. So starting off, the leadoff batter, Luke Skywalker. Right off the bat, Luke Skywalker, he's going to give a power and a presence to get us started here, and has good speed. He's youthful, he's young, he's spry. He's going to be a great leadoff batter for this team. Next up, Mace Windu. He has that wisdom, that experience, this leadership that this team needs, and he's very strong, and he knows how to use dark power, dark energy, the dark side of the Force to his advantage, and he's really disciplined. So I think he's a great hitter at that second spot. Of course, next up, Yoda at the 3-hole. Kind of similar to Mace Windu. He's wise, he's old, he's the greatest, one of the greatest Jedis to ever exist in the entire order. Perfect guy for this lineup. At the 4-hole spot, we got Chewbacca. Chewbacca, he's a power hitter. Oh yeah, Chewbacca hits bombs. Good luck chasing those balls, because Chewbacca is going to hit it out of the park. Next up, General Grievous. He's able to wield 4 lightsabers, so I can only imagine how he's going to be able to wield the bat and be a slugger for this team. He has great technique, and he's going to have a phenomenal batting stance. So I think he's just going to be a menace when he steps in to the plate. Then behind him is going to be Darth Maul. Kind of similar, has a really strong technique, very unique, can lay down a bunt when you need it to. He's just going to be super disciplined. He's going to do what's best for the team. And then Rey is going to be in the 7th hole spot, kind of a newcomer as well, a little bit new addition to this lineup, but she's going to do really well. And I think she's going to add some speed and agility to this team. And then Princess Leia at the 8-hole spot. Why Princess Leia? Because she's going to be the caring, courteous member of this team. She's going to be able to talk to them, make sure they're mentally focused, and she's also going to bring it everything she's got when she steps into the plate. And then finally at the 9-hole spot, Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader, depending on which one you want. He's going to be exactly what this 9-hole spot needs. He's going to bring the power. He's going to bring the wood, and he's going to do what he can for this batting lineup. And I think that's a perfect lineup coming out of the Star Wars universe. Some may be saying, "Oh, where's Obi-Wan Kenobi? Where's Han Solo?" Sorry, I had to make some choices. I tried to keep it within the Jedi Order or Sith or something along those lines. But General Grievous, he's just his technique and being able to wield all those lightsabers. I think you have to put him in a batting lineup. And then Chewbacca, it's Chewbacca. He's a Wookiee. of course I got to pick him. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, all of those social media platforms, so you can get all content and up to date of everything Tyler Bright and Early. So PBJ Productions, official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. That's going to do it here today.